Hey guys, today we're going to look at dotted notes. Alright, so the easiest way to look at this, I guess, maybe we should draw our measure here. Alright, and let's divide it into 4 quarters. This is going to be our downbeats. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So far, we've had notes like a half note, and our half note is going to receive 2 beats. So 1 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Bam. Yeah. We've had quarter notes. So 1, bam. So this here. But we haven't looked at any notes that receive 3 of these boxes. Obviously, we've looked at the whole note, which gets 4. But there is a way to represent 3 of these quarters. Okay? So how we can represent this is by creating a half note, which is going to receive 2 boxes here. 1, 2. But by adding a dot, so our dotted notes, by putting a little dot here, this is going to add value to this note. Now, depending on the note is how much it's going to add. Let me explain. Alright, so let's look at this half note and divide it into 2. So here's a half note. So if we cut it in 2, we'll have 2 quarter notes. So basically, when we add a dot, it's exactly the same as adding an extra quarter. So we have a whole note, which is going to be 2 quarter notes. So now we have our whole note here, but we want to add an extra quarter. This half note is going to receive 2 boxes, but I want a quarter note here. And I want all of this to be together, not da, bop. So by adding this dot, it's exactly the same as what we're representing here. So now we have a half note plus a quarter note. A quarter note is going to be half of a half note. So just always remember that the dot is going to equal to half of the value of the note. So we have here a half note. When we put a dot, half of a half is going to be a quarter. Hope you're good with your math. So this is technically going to equal 3 quarters. Okay, so now we have like an empty box here, and you could put a quarter rest, you could put a quarter note, you could put 2/8 notes, as long as we fill all of the space. So here we go. So let's see what this sounds like. And then we'll look at a few of the common dotted cliches that you're going to encounter. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum. If we made this a quarter, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, bum. So dotted half notes, very easy to work with, because it's just creating an extra quarter, which is usually going to be like 3 quarters of the bar. When you start dotting like quarter notes or like 1/8 notes, and we haven't even talked about 16ths yet, that's when things start getting a little tricky. So let's see if you can figure this one out on your own. So here we've got our quarter note and we've got a dot. What's half of a quarter? It would be an 1/8, right? So technically here we've got a quarter plus an 1/8. Now we know that an 1/8 note is going to be half of one of these boxes. So we could cut each one of these boxes in half, and we would have 8 boxes. That's why we say 1/8 notes. So this quarter note is going to take up one box for sure. But then we've got a dot here, and we know that half of a quarter is going to be an eighth. So if we took this quarter box here and kind of chopped it in half, we would know that this dot is going to take up this space here. So technically, you've got 3 eighth notes, time-wise, or a quarter and an eighth, or 3 eighth notes, all in one. So here we have a quarter note with our eighth dot. So this is going to take up this box plus half of this box. So very common cliches that you can see is something like this. So there's an eighth rest. So I've got a quarter note which takes this up. This dot represents this space here. And then now we have completed and created one by putting our rest here. So this would be like a very common dotted 2-beat cliche that you can see. We could even put an eighth note here. You know, so this would sound like 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, bum. Very common one. Alright. Let me write a few of the common cliches just to show you. And then as always, we're going to have our fun dictation. Alright, so let's see what this sounds like. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, bum. Right? We could add a quarter here, and we could dot this guy. So normally the half would take up these 2 boxes, and then we know half of a half is a quarter, and this is going to be technically this box here, but then they're all linked together. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, bum. And obviously we could, you know, have a rest here with this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, rest. Bum. All of the cliches containing dotted half notes are going to be pretty easy to get. Also remember, we can dot notes, we can dot a half note. It'll receive 3 boxes, but we can also dot a half note rest. You can dot rests, no problem. Got your little hat here. So we know that this is going to be a rest or silence for 2 boxes, but we want rest or silence for 3 boxes. So then we just add our quarter to it by putting our dot. So now this is going to be 3 boxes of silence, and we can add 2 eighth notes over here for fun. Okay, so this would sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Da da. We can even dot a quarter note rest. So we got our quarter note rest here. This is going to take up 1 box, but we want it to take up more than 1 box. We want it to take up this box and half of this one. So by putting our dot here, that's the equivalent of an eighth note little spot here, or box. So we've got a quarter plus an eighth. So here's our quarter plus an eighth. And then we could maybe add an eighth note here, and then possibly start getting crazy. Dot our quarter note, and we know that that's going to enter into the next space. And we could add us an eighth note rest here. So you can see that once you start dotting notes and dotting rests, it really it starts expanding, and you start having a lot more options, and you can't get away without learning or using dotted notes. This is just common stuff when it comes to reading and writing music. So here we would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Da da. Let's look at a dotted cliche now, but where we begin the cliche with an eighth note, not with a dotted note. So here's our eighth note. We know that our eighth note is taking up half of this quarter box. Maybe I put a quarter note here, and I want this quarter note to take up this whole space here. So this is a quarter plus an eighth. Well, here's my quarter. There's my eighth. And so here you've got your eighth note, a quarter note, and then an eighth here. So this is taking up 3/8. This guy's taking up 1/8, which gives you a half. Okay, so this would sound something like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, da da. And so da da. We could also start this with an eighth note. Rest, eighth note rest. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest. Da. Let's start with a quarter note rest. Let's dot it. So we know that this is going to be this quarter box plus half of this quarter box. So this dotted rest is going to receive this quarter in this eighth. Maybe let's add an eighth note here for fun. And then maybe a dotted quarter note. This dotted quarter note, the quarter note's going to receive the quarter box plus this eighth. It's going to get this box here. Let's try this rhythm. See if you can do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Da da da. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da da da. So we've got our quarter note rest, which is taking up this box. We've got this dot, which is representing this eighth note space here. Brings them together, so this is now 3/8 of rest. Then to complete the second box, we've got an eighth note. This is now complete. Here we've got a quarter note, which takes up this box. We've got an eighth note technically, so a dot here, a dotted quarter is going to be worth same as this, same thing, so 3/8, and then we complete it with an eighth note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, rest. Da da da.